this is Amy with the Hag Reads here again with another vlog. So I'm going to talk about 5 books today, and they'll be quick because they are Agatha Christie Poirot mysteries and a little bit of Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys. So we'll whip right through those. I did want to go back for a second and talk a little bit about Everland. I'm trying to catch up on my my booktube videos, and I was watching one by Peter Likes Books about why he doesn't read series and duologies. And it really resonated with some of the feelings I was trying to convey in my video when I talked about Everland. I'm going to link it below, but I'm also going to just quickly go over my reasoning here without doing a full video on this, because he's already done it, and it kind of touched on most of the things that I find frustrating right now about series. Not so much duologies, but specifically with some trilogies that have come out recently. So Everland is kind of a series that there's 2 types of series, and not specifically even in YA overall. There's the type of series that is each an individual standalone story with a resolution, with an option for more stories. They'll either start to introduce something new, or they'll let on that there's going to be more from this character or in this world. And those are my preferred type. I like the book to wrap up nice and complete with its story. It's okay if a little bit's left unraveled, that they're going to then address those kind of backstory issues in another book. Harry Potter is a good example of this, where you get a complete story, but a little bit of it's left undone for the next book. The other type of story is series that are not, the book itself is not a complete story. These are the cliffhanger endings, and I don't like these nearly as well, because you come to a point and you know you're reading the book and you're looking at how many pages are left, and you know they're not going to resolve this. They're going to leave it hanging wide open, and for a new, I don't mind this quite so much in a series that's complete or very far along in itself. I despise this type of thing in a series that is just starting out, where the first book is released and then you have to wait a year, maybe even 2 years, to see the next. So every time the book comes out, you have to go back, a new book comes out, you have to go back and read the other ones again. And that's all well and good, but it's very frustrating to go through all of this and then reach the end of the story, and it's not the fucking end of the story. Excuse my language. I really dislike that. And it's becoming a bigger thing in trilogies, not so much in duologies. Sometimes you'll get a duology that's a cliffhanger, but typically it's just a continuation. And I don't mind it so much in a duology, because you know it's going to be resolved in 2 books, not in 15 books. Trilogies where I have seen this recently, where the second book, in my opinion, is completely unnecessary and superfluous, are books like The Fifth Wave. There was no reason for the second book. It could have been a nice tight duology. All the second book did was set up a third of a story, really, with no real ending, with no real purpose for the entire story. And also, when I read Robe Apocalypse, I felt the same way. That second book did not need to be there. It could have been a nice tight duology. And I don't mind a cliffhanger in a duology, especially if it's already complete. But, so willing to wait on that. But when I know that there's going to be 3, 4, 5, 10 books, or that there are, and who knows how long it takes the author to get those out, it's just very frustrating. And you don't get a sense of completion. You get to the end and you're like, I have to read another 1,000-page book to get the resolution of the story. And I realize that's, you know, an insurance policy for authors, that you're going to continue reading their works. But there's nothing more frustrating than reaching the end of the book, and even if it's a completed series, you have to get the next book to know the conclusion of this story, and you know that second book is not just going to be the conclusion of this story, it's the opening of another one that's going to end the same way, and so you're going to go along the path and be frustrated at every turn. And this is why I largely don't read front list. I don't read newly published books, especially series, because I really dislike this. I will read completed series or ones that have been going on for a while, that have this type of ending, because I can pick up the next one fairly quickly. But this is, it's a way to continue ensuring that you're going to buy the next book, because as with Everland, it's a new book. The next one's not coming out until at least next year, and the story had a big fucking fat cliffhanger ending, no resolution at all, very frustrating. And now I have to wait a year, and I probably will not pick up the book. I may feel differently in a year, but right now I'm so frustrated with that author that they didn't complete the story, because there was a way to complete this story and leave it wide open for further adventures in whatever way it was possible. You just slapdash the ending out there and left us hanging, and I don't like that. Because I've paid, in this case I went to the library, but let's say I went out and paid for that book, that hardcover. Hold on, and I'll get you a price on that. Okay, so when it came out, the price on the inside cover is $17.99, $20 for a book that does not tell you a whole story. Adult books for hardcover new release can go up to $30, $35. Say for something like a George R.R. Martin, you're certainly at least looking at $30 for most hardcover books these days, in series, because they are anywhere from 500 to 1,200 pages. And they're not even a complete story. And this is the type of thing, like, I really enjoyed Game of Thrones, Song of Fire and Ice by George R.R. Martin. But there are so many characters, the books are so thick. And his thing is kind of, you might get a bit of a story in the middle of one of the books, and it may not pick up that storyline for 3 novels. But also, each individual book is not a complete story. It leaves you completely hanging on the edge. And while I really enjoyed the books, I'm particularly frustrated, as is most of the reading universe that has enjoyed his books, that we're probably never going to see a conclusion to the series other than the one that comes through the HBO series. So that's frustrating. So I have some examples of series that are complete in each book, and then, obviously leave open for a larger story arc. The Rachel Morgan or the Hollow series, the Black Dagger Brotherhood, which is, the sexy vampire novels. And there's another one like that, the dark ones with the Carpathians. Also, each one is a complete story in and of itself. Hannah Swenson, the Cozy Murder Mysteries. Loon Lake, which are fishing cozy mysteries. And I consider the Harry Potter books to be complete stories in and of themselves, which you don't necessarily have you don't get to the end and you're like, now I have to read another book to find out how this one ended. No, you have to read a book to know what's the next story, because you obviously haven't reached the conclusion of the overall story arc. Series that I feel like are that cliffhanger, unsatisfying ending for me are Everland, The Fifth Wave, particularly the second book, Song of Ice and Fire, George R.R. Martin, the Hive series, which is a children's fiction series, Institute of Higher Villainous Education, something like that. The last few books, and I don't even know if this is going to be the conclusion when he reaches the 9th book, has taken 2 years for the author to get them out to the public. So you're talking about children readers who are going to surpass the age demographic for the book, never being able to know the ending of the story. Very frustrating, in my opinion. Robopocalypse, again, particularly the second book. With Everland, or with The Fifth Wave, Robopocalypse, and even Warm Bodies, I feel like those first books ended in a way that was sufficient. Like, it didn't necessarily need to be more. But then you got to the second book, and it was clear that that was just a money grab for a third book in the series. That's how it felt to me. I'm not saying that's the intention. And you may like these type of stories where it drives you to the next book, to the next book, to the next book. But I'm just as likely to pick up the next book in the series for the first type, and in fact, I'm more likely to pick up the next book because it was a full and complete story, and I felt satisfied. And if I'm reading a new series where the books are still being released, I don't feel quite so frustrated that now I have to wait a year to know the ending of this story and then to find out what the next story is going to be like. So that's my objection. Warm Bodies, certainly, and the example that Peter Likes Books gave in his was the book he just finished, Six of Crows, where he got all the way to the end, and it's a book that's much longer than he normally reads, and it wasn't the ending. And I understand his frustration. And I'll, I think with Peter Likes Books, it's you either love it or hate it for his channel. I just find him entertaining, but when he did that video, he spoke eloquently about the issues of why he doesn't read series and duologies, and a lot of it brushed up against the reasons why I have been frustrated of late with the cliffhanger type of series, and I probably will be years, if ever, before I read like Six of Crows or there's The Court of Mist and whatever, those ones, because there have been too many people just praising the heck out of them, and I don't feel like it's genuine all the time. But also because I recognize the way they're described, that these are going to frustrate me because they don't end feeling like a complete story. Like if it takes a year to get to the next one, that what I'll get is another new whole story set in the same world, and possibly even with the same characters. What I have to wait a year for is to find out the end of this story that I have now vested however many hours of reading or listening to, and I don't even get to know the end. That feels very disingenuous to me on the part of the author. You can't even finish the story and leave me wanting more of that world. You don't satisfy my reading craving, and so now I've invested all this time in this book, and what I want to do is throw it across the room. So I wanted to kind of come back and address that, because that's what I was kind of getting at when I was talking about Everland, but I don't think I successfully accomplished that. And I realized it when I was watching Peter Likes Books, his video on the topic, that I realized what it was that I really found frustrating about Everland. So now we'll address very quickly the 5 books that I've read in the last couple of days. So all of the Hercule Poirot and all of the Nancy Drew and Hardy Boys. So the Hercule Poirot ones come in usually between 250 and 300 pages, and they're pretty generously spaced. I liken them to the spacing and layout of a middle grade reader book. And then all of the Nancy Drew Hardy Boys books come in right around 180 pages, and those are spaced and layout, and the layout is like a children's book, beyond like picture books, but it's maybe similar to middle grade, a little bit more generous spacing, I think. So they're always quick reads, they're always enjoyable. So I read 3 Agatha Christie Hercule I can't get there today, I just can't. Hercule Poirot novels. The first one was a 3-act tragedy, which is a murder in 3 acts, and in this one, Hercule Poirot only plays a part at towards the end, maybe the middle of the 2nd act, and then he's present in the 3rd act. So a very interesting, typical murder mystery for there is a dinner party and there are all these people, and one guy drinks his drink and almost immediately drops dead, and then the ensuing mystery of that is the plot for that one. Death in the Clouds is Murder on a Plane with Hercule Poirot. Also, again, very interesting slice of characters, and also kind of an interesting look at early air travel too, for the public. And then the last one was the ABC Murders, which is kind of a serial killer murder mystery for Poirot, which you don't see very often. Most of these are individual kind of locked room mysteries, that sort of thing, or dinner parties gone wrong. But I found all 3 of them enjoyable. I'm enjoying the series. Although I did enjoy Miss Marple much better than I like the character of Hercule Poirot, the mysteries themselves are just as well written and interesting. a lot of times I can kind of guess the ending, but I don't always know 100% for sure. Whereas in most modern mystery novels, I can guess the ending before it gets there, and I'm frustrated by that because I like to be stumped. It's more fun when I can't figure it out. So, and then the final two books were What Happened at Mid... No, the first one was a Nancy Drew book, The Quest of the Missing Map, which I really enjoyed this one a lot. I liked this one. So if you like Nancy Drew, I think I might have rated that one 5 stars instead of 4, because most of them I rate at 4 stars for the age range that they're directed at. I think that they're still that quality after all these years. And then 2 Hardy Boys mystery novels, What Happened at Midnight, which was kind of a corporate espionage one, and also While the Clock Ticked, which was kind of a locked room mystery. Both were good. Both, put more danger for the boys than for Nancy Drew in these, of course. But enjoyed all of them. Good, light, easy reads. This was towards the end of when I was sick, and I could just only really lay in bed. And so I did some easy, light reading, where I didn't have to think very hard. And I almost always, I experienced some kind of, not frustration, but, I guess, what do I want to say here? A kind of, I don't know, a feeling that the story doesn't go along fast enough. Like, I see where it's going, but I'm an adult, and so I think the pacing is set more for younger readers who might take a little bit more time to figure out the mystery. I want it to move along faster because I've already figured out the plot sequence and where it's going, and I just want to see how the author writes it out. So occasionally I get that kind of feeling, and I don't know if it's actually would be considered frustration, or if maybe I'm just anxious. Like, I feel like the pacing should be faster, but that's just how I feel. I enjoyed all 5 of these books, and would definitely recommend them if you're in the mood for this sort of thing. None of them include Hardy Boys, Nancy Drew, and even Hercule Poirot, for the most part. There are a few. If you go in and look at the series overall, there's a note at the top of it, and it'll tell you which books you should read before others because there's a connection. But for the most part, all of these can be read independently. They do not need to be read in any particular order. I am just weird like that. I like to read books in the order that they're, in the series. So that's just me. You could read the Hardy Boys and the Nancy Drews in any order you wanted to, and they would all make sense, and you wouldn't have missed a thing if you started with 35 instead of number 1. So that is all I have. So look, an under 20-minute video, almost a shocker for me. So I enjoyed speaking with you. I hope you enjoyed listening. If you have watched all the way to the end, thank you. Happy whatever time of day it is. It is almost 7 here, so I am done for the day. I'm going to engage in some knitting and a little bit of reading, and try and catch up on a little bit more of my BookTube videos. I'm a little bit behind. I will see you next time. Happy whatever time of day it is. I know I said it already, and bye!